Kyl, and Senator Kyl has submitted an opening statement which will be placed in the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. By the way, I think that last point is a very important point and needs to be underscored, and it's one of the most important things that comes from this, from your statement today.
Thank you, Senator.
Ms. Hill. I was this morning detained in my office waiting for a couple of phone calls, but I had my television on the entire time and was privileged to hear not only the statements of the chairman of our committee, but also the statements made by Ms. Breitweiser and Mr. Push. And as has been expressed by others here, my heart goes out to them and to the families and friends that they represent. And I think that I should state that I am certain that every American shares their grief and their anger and even their frustration. And I also share their view that there's more we could have done to try to prevent the terrorism we experienced on September 11th. I also agree that with Eleanor Hill that at the end of the day it's doubtful that we'll ever find a smoking gun, but as she said, the important point is to be in a better position to deal with the other pieces of information in order to try to prevent this in the future. I do think, Mr. Chairman, that it is very unclear whether the joint committee investigation that we're engaged in here and whatever report we eventually submit will satisfy these witnesses and those that they represent, or whether they'll satisfy members of this committee, let alone the other members of the House and the Senate. As you know, Mr. Chairman, I've expressed serious reservations about the direction of our investigation, including the allocation of time and resources to holding open hearings at this time before we've finished our work. Ours is a large undertaking, and we've got a lot more work to do before our fast approaching deadline. And yet we're proceeding with public hearings in spite of not having completed that investigation. What was presented today was only a staff document. I'm talking now about the testimony of Ms. Hill. It was not a consensus product of the committee. Members had no practical input into this interim report. I think the public should know. Ordinarily, we investigate, we write our report, and then we present our recommendations. The staff's presentation of its interim report before member vetting is therefore, in my view, premature, as well as a diversion of the joint staff from the investigation that we've given them the job to do. The interim statement from our joint inquiry staff provides some very valuable information about what has been done to date, a chronology of events leading to the September 11th attacks, and some background information about the growing threat of al-Qaeda over the last decade. It is very useful to have this history, and it's important to make it public. But the committee should have approved it first. And in any event, the release of the report could have been done without taking the time to have it read by the staff director. But more importantly, I believe that questions fundamental to our investigation have yet to be pursued adequately. These include, but are not limited to, whether part of the pre-September 11th problem was a result of a culture of risk aversion in the intelligence community and/or an inadequate allocation and improper prioritization of resources to those on the front lines of our counterterror efforts. Mr. Chairman, you know I've expressed before my concern that committee members have been able to play only a limited role in this inquiry. It's largely being conducted by the Joint Committee staff with little input by or to our own committee staffs, let alone the members themselves. And that will make it difficult to concur in the final product without reservations. We will not know what we haven't been told, and therefore we will not be able to vouch unequivocally for the final product. Questions about this investigative process have led to calls for the creation of a national commission to investigate all of these matters. This would further stress the intelligence community at the very time we're trying to fight the war on terrorism. While it may be deemed necessary, it can hardly be deemed desirable. So I hope, Mr. Chairman, that we can continue to work to resolve these issues. Only by doing our very best will we have done our duty to the victims who are represented here today and to the American people.